Let's talk expectations for the Trump versus Biden presidential debate tonight. It is the first and likely 50%, that is, it represents 50% of all the presidential debates we'll get in the cycle, which, worth noting, between 2000 and 2016, we usually had 3 debates in each presidential election cycle. We only got 2 in 2020. We're only getting 2 now in 2024. So 50% of our presidential debate today in this cycle. So expectations. Look, I'm just going to be blunt about this. I think Democrats are just hoping that Joe Biden doesn't have an oopsie-doopsie Mitch McConnell glitch. Glitch McConnell means bad news for Democrats and Biden. I think Republicans are kind of hoping that Biden has a glitch because it would be the easiest slam dunk for Donald Trump. Now, obviously, 80% of the country won't actually change their mind from these debates. 80% of the country has already decided. 40% of you watching this right now are like, I don't give a crap about the debate. I'm voting for whichever side it is. And that's okay. But what matters here is the middle. The middle is what is going to swing the Electoral College. Remember, it's not the popular vote that matters, it's the Electoral College. So what's going to swing the swing states? It's these debates. It's the economy going into the election. Look, the election's still like 131 days away, which is crazy that we're having a debate this early anyway. Usually you don't have debates before September. And usually you have a nonpartisan presidential election commission that oversees the debates and the debate schedule and the debate moderators because of exactly this. You don't want CNN being able to control the mute button, CNN kicking out all in-studio audience, CNN preventing any reporters from being inside the facility, CNN CNN is preventing smaller YouTube channels and independent media from commenting on the debate during the debate stream. There's a lot here that's weird that CNN is doing. The whole mic mute thing is a lot of power, right? We haven't seen this before. And it's all in CNN's hands. So there is a lot of concern that the debate we're going to get is going to be rigged in favor of Biden. Obviously, CNN's a left-leaning channel. Now, others are saying, well, CNN's going to try to counterbalance that and maybe lean more nicely towards Donald Trump, but I doubt that. In fact, I think there's a possibility that this whole mic mute thing is going to piss Donald Trump off so much that he might walk out of the debate. He could just get up and walk out. And that would really be bad for America because it would send a signal that America has gotten so divided that not only do we have trouble trusting elections, but now we can't even trust the debate process anymore. So this whole thing CNN is doing, I think, is un-American and undemocratic, and they should be sued. That's right. We filed a lawsuit against them last night at 2 a.m. because screw them. They're silencing smaller creators, and so I tweeted about this. I made a video on the channel about it. I'm not going to rehash all of it. You could retweet it if you want to help out. But we filed a lawsuit against them, and we're right now finishing writing our temporary restraining order so we can get hopefully an emergency injunction hearing today. So that's what we're working on. Well, that's what my attorney is working on. I'm wearing a bread broche jacket because I'm tired and this is comfortable. But so expectations here, okay? So notice so far I haven't talked policy at all. I've talked about how the debate is going to be divisive because of how the debate is going to be put on. CNN has a lot of power and people are going to think this is going to be rigged in Biden's favor, especially with that mic muting technology. I think if there's a point where Donald Trump gets frustrated, it's not going to be towards the end. It won't be like the last 10% of the debate, because then that'll make it seem like he's just walking out to make a point. I think like the max walkout point is about 60% into the debate, and then he'll GTFO if he feels like he's not able to finish his thoughts, or he feels like, he's getting hard balls and Biden's getting soft balls. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen because, again, it's just going to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth and it's going to create more frustration. Now, when it comes to actual policy, let's be crystal clear. Biden is trying to lick the wounds, and that's okay because that's what you kind of have to do when you're the incumbent. everybody kind of like, when you're the incumbent, everybody looks at like the bad, right? And then they compare it to an era of stimulus and stock market insanity and fear, but then V-shaped recovery in the economy. Like, oh, this is hell. Oh, this is wonderful. Like we went through an emotional roller coaster, but it was a quick roller coaster. It was a Larry Kudlow V-shaped recovery. Now, obviously, that was heavily due to massive money printing and support, not only from the government, but also the Federal Reserve. But what's most important is how people feel today. And unfortunately, people have kind of felt not great since about November of 21, which was peak of the market. You had a lot of fear and uncertainty. January of 2022, some YouTubers made like the economy's about to crash, like the Titanic videos. That was me. And the market tanked basically throughout all of 2022. Chips went into recession. Autos went into recession. Interest rate sensitives went into recession. Cyclicals, commodities, everything, layoffs. Like 22 was bad. And then 23 was good for certain sectors like AI and the chip segment, but not everything's doing great. So, in fact, the lower end American, that is lower income, middle income, grocery prices are still high, housing is impossible to afford, student loan debt is extremely expensive, anybody with a variable rate loan is pissed, anybody in commercial real estate is pissed, and people who are outside of the Magnificent Six stocks, Mag 7 minus Tesla, they're also pissed. The equal weighted S&P 500 is not doing very well. It's actually in a pretty bad place. The S&P 500 is only up because of those top six. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, and the problem with it is we are now sitting at basically a year and a half, actually more. No, we're sitting at about 2.5 years of pain, 22, 23 and a half. We're sitting at 2.5 years of pain. If people are still feeling this pain by November of 2024, election time, you're going to be at 3 years of pain. And I'll tell you, the thing that makes pain substantially worse is time. So, like, you have pain for a little bit, like March in COVID, and then everything V-shaped recoveries, assuming you didn't get the illness. Okay, great. Like, cool. That was weird. Okay, we can get through this. 3 years of now the side effects of that, inflation and whatever else, it's a big deal. Now, I'm not here to take sides. I'm just simply to talk about my predictions. I think that a lot of people are going to vote based on what I just described. And so I do think that Donald Trump has an edge at this point. He might even have a substantial edge at this point, like 65-35. That's my take, okay? We can look at Real Clear Politics and look at all the different polls, but, I also question polls. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but, we'll look at them. But that's just my opinion right now. Now, if inflation goes to zero, we start cutting rates like crazy, it'll look political, and people feel like things are getting better and we're going to avoid a recession by November, great. Maybe economically, Biden's going to have a shot. But right now, it feels like things are going the opposite direction. That is, more cracks are forming in the economy, and it's taking longer for the Federal Reserve to actually bring us some interest rate relief. Now, they have their own reasons for that. We don't have to make this an economic video. I talk about that enough. Now, if the economy does continue to crack and go towards the direction of a recession, it's probably, from an economic point of view, going to be almost certain that Donald Trump is going to win. Okay, and now we can think about things like, Israel, the border, Russia, but I don't know that these are going to be the things that people are going to vote on as much as the economy. The next thing I think people are going to vote on more is going to be abortion, but Donald Trump has actually taken a stance that, shouldn't be seen as that horrible for women. Now, this I know is very, very touchy, so I'm going to be careful about this, but I'm just going to be clear, okay? My wife, she's like, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to take abortion rights away from women. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's made it very clear. No nationwide ban. Leave it up to the states. And I'm like, you think California is going to take away abortion rights? I mean, like, we're personally not really into abortion. I mean, we got 7 kids, okay? I'm just saying, like, she's thinking from a woman point of view. And she's like, oh my gosh, women's rights, Trump's going to ruin it all. I'm like, I don't think so. I get it. installing more conservative justices led to the loss of Roe v. Wade, but that didn't ban abortion. That just moved it back to the states. And, you even have the Supreme Court sort of softening by now forcing, for example, Idaho to enable emergency abortions. And Donald Trump's made his position pretty clear. His position's very clear that, look, he believes in abortions for life of mother, rape, incest, and obviously, some form of, and this is what he argues is up to the states, some form of limit at some age. Now, Donald Trump does do the typical Republican thing, which is, oh, the Democrats will kill your babies at 40 weeks. No, they don't. No. That's not fair. Okay, it's just not fair. California and New York are some of the most liberal, and you're generally at fetal viability, which would put you between 22 to 24 weeks. Now, that is late, but, there's a difference between saying, okay, 15-week abortion ban and, California tops off at, let's say, fetal heartbeat, so 22 weeks, let's say. Okay, that's a 7-week difference. That's different than saying, oh, we want to stop abortions at 15 weeks. The Democrats will go to 40. Okay, that's 25 weeks of it. That's like 3.5x. That's not what's happening. Of course, unless there's a situation in the life of a mother where, like, if the child is going to die anyway, and keeping the child inside could kill the mother right before a term. Well, most states enable saving the life of the mother. That's the way it is. So I actually think abortion is going to be a big issue, mostly, though, because I don't think people realize that the candidates, they don't actually really want to be involved in the abortion topic. It's kind of like, let the states decide, and so they just sort of backpedal away from this. Of course, that'll be Trump's POV. It'll be easier for Biden to just go, right to choice, because that's what the Democratic position will be. But so I try to allay that, because that I don't think that's really as big of an issue, this idea that, oh, Trump's going to ruin all women's rights. I don't see that. So, but I think economy is number one issue. Number two is abortion. Again, I don't think it should be number two, but it is, mostly because I don't think there's that much delta between what you get. I do think the border and obviously geopolitics are a substantial issue. And so Biden actually implemented Donald Trump's executive order for limiting the level of asylum seekers that are accepted at the border to now 1,500, which basically, because we're well over 4,500 per day, up to that executive order, we're basically limited. We're done. Can't take any more asylum seekers. But that doesn't mean people can't still come in illegally. And keep in mind, there's also this politically motivated benefit to immigrants coming in, legal or not, because they contribute to employment numbers. They lower wages because they'll compete for less, and that could lower inflation. It makes the economy look stronger. Immigrants, whether illegal or not, even though they receive a bunch of social benefits, their effect, their multiplier on GDP is net positive to the country. I personally ran for governor under the premise of we should have very stringent legal immigration, and I'm a believer that laws should be followed. Crime's obviously a big issue, especially in places like California, Oregon, whatever. New York's having issues. The bail reform was a disaster in New York. But the border will be an issue. I think Biden's going to use his use of the Trump executive order as a way to try to get some street cred here, but Trump's going to take credit for it. And it was a Trump-style executive order, after all. It was modeled after the same verbiage that Trump used. There was just sort of an on and off switch that was edited in for Joe Biden, since a lot of courts were trying to shut Trump down on that. Okay, so economics, abortion, border. Then we're going to get into crime and geopolitics. I think are going to be relatively balanced. Obviously, we need better education. We need mental health support. We need to deal with homelessness and better schooling, better jobs. This is all very important. Obviously there'll be some pitter patter about electric vehicles and American choice and made by American workers and tariffs on China and that kind of stuff. But I think more important than those things will be crime. That one's pretty straightforward. I think we all want laws to be enforced. I was one of the first as a gubernatorial candidate in California to say, this defund the police is bullshit. Like, we need to fully fund the police and train them better and give them more resources, not less. So, anyway, then geopolitics. Obviously, it is, it's helpful that Donald Trump can say, hey, I didn't have a war with Israel, Russia, or potentially Taiwan. There was no Hamas taking hostages. There were no Houthis shooting rockets at our container ships. There was no, Putin lobbing rockets onto the capital of Ukraine. We didn't have that. So this is going to be a very easy sort of defense that Donald Trump will be able to use if Biden tries to attack him, or Trump will just bring it up himself. That's obviously pretty straightforward. Biden would have to take a harder route here and try to go with well, you planted the seeds for this. Had you not reduced, funding for NATO, let's say, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Which, of course, Donald Trump will then respond to that and say, what are you talking about? I just forced them to pay their fair share. Otherwise, they're going to threaten to kick him out. Which is just sort of like the type of negotiator you have. The sort of the hardball, like, like, we're America. Like, you either listen or we're not participating. And then you have sort of the more conciliatory approach. Both styles work in their own ways. So, I think ultimately, unfortunately, this is a very tough election for an incumbent. I think Biden's in a really tough place. Like, I try to put myself in that position. When I say unfortunately, it sort of implies that, like, I'm trying to pick a side. That's not it. I'm not editing this video. I'm just speaking freely here. I say that, like, because I think of myself, if I was going to be in Biden's shoes, I'd be like, this is not what I want to go into a re-election campaign with. Interestingly, Trump had a lot of things going for him with this idea of like, hey, the economy's doing really well, in the 2020 election. Like, we're about to get COVID vaccines, although the COVID vaccines were announced like right after the election. Who knows? A lot of people say that was rigged on purpose. It was like 3 or 4 days after the election. Oh, all of a sudden we have the COVID vaccine. I was like, okay. But yeah, it's really interesting that if you try to put yourself in the shoes right now of a candidate, it's really easy to bag on the current. The question, though, is not so much about the past. It's about the future. It's like, what's each candidate's vision for the future? If this is just like a pitter-patter about the past, it's going to be kind of like as expected of a debate. But the big concern to me is, what are their suggestions going to be for the future? And so I think that's what everybody should be voting on. But frankly, I think it's the last thing people are going to be voting for. It's going to be very emotional based on what has been. So anyway, these are some of my thoughts. Hopefully you find this perspective useful. I will do my best to live stream this. I will certainly be live streaming my commentary on X and on Twitch. But I will also try to go live on YouTube, though you never know. It's possible they could try to take me down. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Thank you so very much for being here. I appreciate your support, and we'll see y'all soon. Thanks. Bye.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.
Even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is not personalized advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective, information, and commentary. Any third-party content I show shall not be deemed endorsed by me. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are either paid affiliations or products or services we may benefit from. I also personally operate an actively managed ETF. I may personally hold or otherwise hold long or short positions in various securities, potentially including those mentioned in this video. However, I have no relationship to any issuer other than HouseHack, nor am I presently acting as a market maker. Make sure if you're considering investing in HouseHack to always read the PPM at househack.com.